We're going to take the data that you got yesterday in your constant velocity lab, show you how to take it out of your shared folder in Google Drive, put it into Google Sheets, and then delete data that's not relevant and plot a graph. So I'm going to first go into my shared with me folder. That's what most of you are going to find this in. If you were the person that actually collected the data, you may have put it somewhere else. But if you're anybody else, this is where you should find it, in your shared with me folder. When I click on that, I see earlier this week, this would have been yesterday, shared with me constant speed data to demo. I'm going to click on that. Now, when I click on that, it takes me right to Google Sheets. If you deleted the dot ending for the file name, it should have been a CSV, .csv. If you deleted that, it's going to open it up in this other viewing app. It's going to give you an option right up here to open in Google Sheets. If you see that option to open in Google Sheets, then that's what you need to do. If your screen is darker, you're not in the right place. You need to open in Google Sheets. If the screen is white like this, then you're probably in the right place and you're good to go. So if it's not in Google Sheets right now, put it in Google Sheets just by clicking open in Google Sheets. Now, you can see that I've got all kinds of data here, most of which is completely irrelevant. I did 4 trials, and when I exported my data, it exported all 4 trials. My 4th trial, when I saw on my phone screen the graphs, my 4th trial was the one that I wanted to use. So I'm going to delete the first 3 trials here. And I'm going to do that by not clicking on this data. Rather, I'm going to go right up to the header A. Right up to the header A. Click on that and then drag over. Drag the headers. Okay, right over to right there. So we're not highlighting just the data, we're highlighting the columns by clicking on the headers. And now I'm going to right click, or with your Chromebooks, just 2-finger touch, same as right click, and then delete all of those columns. Now most of my data is gone. I've got run for time, run for position, run for velocity, run for acceleration. Listen, I don't even want velocity and acceleration, so I'm going to click on column C and D, right click, and delete those as well. Now I've got pretty much the data that I want. I may have some data at the beginning and or the end that's irrelevant. We'll worry about that later on, but at least I've got rid of all the trials that I don't want. I've just got trial 4. All right, now I'm actually going to plot the graph and see if there's any data at the beginning or end that's irrelevant here. So what I'm going to do that is just highlight the data. This time I'm not going to highlight the columns like this. This time I'm just literally highlighting the data from start to finish. There it is. Whoops. I unhighlighted it there by mistake. Okay, let's highlight that data again. And now once I have my data highlighted, like I do here, I want to click Insert, Chart. Insert Chart. Now my chart that pops up is most likely going to be a bar graph, and sure enough it is a bar graph. That's not what you want. I'm not sure why that's the default, because we rarely in anything use bar graphs, but that's what it is. It's not a big deal, we can change that, but make sure you change it to the right thing. From column chart, change it to scroll down, not line graph, rather you want to scatter. Always going to be scatter. For you in Physics 20 and in Physics 30, it will always be scatter. No exceptions to that. Every single time, this is the one you pick. There's my data. Now, sometimes it labels position and time for me for my title. If it does, that's great. If it labels my axes like it has right here, that's great. If it doesn't, then that means you have to label it. Now, occasionally, for whatever reason, it seems to label my title backwards. In other words, time and position. If that's the case, you need to change it. And you can do that by clicking on it and just typing in the proper title. You are responsible for the correct title. If Google Sheets puts the incorrect title in there for you, you're responsible for changing it. We're not going to blame Google Sheets for that, okay? We're going to blame you for that. If Google Sheets does the right thing by default, perfect. You don't have to worry about it. But if it doesn't, you need to change it. Now, you can see this looks like a really good straight line, but there is a little bit of data here at the beginning that looks like it's extraneous data. That occurred before the cart started moving. Right? You pushed it, but you pressed start to start recording data before you actually pushed the cart forward. That's okay, I told you to do that. So we've got this data here that was recording zero position before it was pushed. I want to delete that. My data looks like it starts becoming good at about, well, either 0.4 seconds or 0.5 seconds. Let's go 0.5 seconds. That means let's go back to our data and let's delete everything up to 0.5 seconds. For me, that is. For you, it's going to be different, right? To do that, I'm not going to just select my data. I'm going to select my rows like this. Up to 0.5 seconds. Select your rows. Then right-click or two-finger touch. Delete these rows 2 through 7. Now, you can see that I have a beautiful straight line with no extraneous data. Now it's time to plot what we call a trend line, or in this case it would be a line, a straight line of best fit. You guys learned 2 days ago about straight line graphs and that it represents constant velocity. Well, this cart underwent essentially constant velocity, not necessarily perfect constant velocity, but really close. We're going to draw a straight line that approximates the points to represent not the constant, but the average velocity. Really close to constant, but strictly speaking, just average. The way that I'm going to do that is to, first of all, click on the graph. That gives me 3 buttons in the top right-hand corner. Then I'm going to edit the chart. Now I got a bunch of options here, the options that you saw at the beginning. To draw your trend line, I'm going to click on Customize, Series, and then I'm going to scroll down to where there's a box that says Trend Line, and I'm going to check that box. By default, that will add a linear trend line, a straight line trend line, which looks like it approximates this data really well. Now, it is a little bit hard to see it because my data points are blue and my trend line is blue, so I may choose to change the color to red, make it a little bit more visible, or I may choose to make it a little bit darker by changing it from the opacity from 40% to 100%. I may even make it thicker if I want to. You can choose that. You can make the color of your trend line whatever you want, the color of your data whatever you want, as long as they're both visible. Now, if you remember yesterday when I did the pre-lab lecture, I showed you that there should be numbers at the top here indicating the slope of the graph, which of course is the velocity. Those numbers aren't provided for you right now, so what you got to do within this chart editor Customize series is scroll down even further beyond the trend line to where it says Label. By default, it will be None. Now, here's what some people like to do. They like to click Custom. That is wrong. Do not click Custom. Click Use Equation. Every single time you plot a graph in Physics 20 or in Physics 30, you will pick a scatter plot and you will, under the label, click Use Equation. There are no exceptions to that. So I'm going to click Use Equation, and you can see that it pops up here. It says 0.345x plus negative 0.0813. The slope of this graph would be 0.345, and the y-intercept, which isn't really particularly relevant to us, is negative 0.0813 meters. Now I got to actually put this in my lab write-up. So to put it in my lab write-up, I'm going to go to Google Classroom. This is our classroom. Click on Classwork. Find the assignment, which if I scroll down here, it should be under Kinematics Uniform Motion Lab. Click on that. You can see, if I view the assignment, not ready to turn it in yet, if I view the assignment, gives me all these options. Talk with your teacher. You don't want to do that right now. I'm going to click on, you can see over here, is my work. These are the documents that I created for you. This is your rubric, and this is your template. So I'm going to click on that template. I'm going to scroll down to analysis because that's where a graph should be. I'm going to delete this because I don't want to see that. You're not going to hand in that. That's just instructions for you. Delete that. Now I'm going to go back to my graph, copy that graph, copy chart, and then I'm going to right-click or two-finger touch, paste. Now it's going to ask me to link to the spreadsheet. I will select yes, paste it, and there's my graph. Looks beautiful. Then, of course, you're going to answer your analysis questions, right? Now, I also have to add my data in here. The way to do that is similar. We're going to go back to my spreadsheet. Now I'm going to looks like I've accidentally deleted my position and time headings. So I'm actually going to type that in again. This would be time in seconds, position in meters. And now I'm going to highlight those rows, or those columns, I should say. Right-click, copy, go back to my write-up, under data, and delete this purple or this pink because I don't want to see that. Right-click and paste. So now I have my data recorded in my lab write-up, and I also have my analysis graph in my lab write-up.